Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Tuesday, I think it's the 17th of September. Tonight we have a general meeting for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And just to go over a couple resolutions after, and tonight's actually a special meeting, right? It's a special meeting.
Correct.
We added it. Tonight we only have a general meeting. The main thing we're going to do tonight is go interview people for the town plan and conservation development for 2026. We have 3 people that put in or answered our RFP, and we're glad they're all here tonight. And our first group is here. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And you guys are SLR, is that right?
We are.
Fantastic.
So.
You did a great proposal. Welcome to Darien. I know you've been here many times before. And tell us what you got. I'm sure you have a great presentation for us.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting us to interview for this project. We do have a very brief presentation, maybe 15 minutes. We'll just talk a little bit about ourselves, the kind of work that we do, our approach to this project, and then turn it over to you folks for questions and answers. So meet the planning team. This is us. We will be the face of this project from beginning to end. I'm Nina Peak. I'm the principal, the U.S. Manager of Planning at SLR. I've been a practicing certified planner for about 30 years, working in the Hudson Valley and Connecticut and throughout the Northeast doing short and long range planning. We work on both the public side and the private side, which I think gives us a little bit of an advantage when we're preparing these kinds of plans, because we have some insight into the kind of work that you folks want to do and how to plan for your future, but also working on the private side give us a little insight into the kind of things that folks that are interested in your community want to see. So I will turn it over to Julia.
Sure. Hi, my name is Julia Fiore. I'm a senior economist and community planner with SLR. I have about a decade of planning experience. I'm a certified planner, and I would serve as project manager for this.
Are you related to David Fury or Max Fury?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a very good client of ours.
Oh, okay.
And they're both in real estate, so.
Okay, no, not.
Maybe I should have said yes.
It's my dad.
I'm Mark Carabetta. I'm SLR's U.S. Manager of Climate Resilience Planning. I'm an environmental scientist. I do lots of work relating to climate resilience, flood resiliency, water resources. I'm also a professional wetland scientist and a certified floodplain manager. I grew up in Connecticut. I run our New Paltz, New York office in the Hudson Valley in New York.
Good evening, I'm Robert Collins. I'm also a professional planner with our community planning team. I have close to 30 years of experience working with communities on long-range plans, also like zoning updates and things like that, as well as community engagement, which will be my focus on this particular project.
So we've also listed a couple of more of the key team members. Those are the team back at the shop that will help us produce the document, and everything from graphics to zoning code to data collection and that sort of thing. And then Jason Williams, who's our principal landscape architect, if there's any sort of sketches or other design components that will be incorporated into the POCD, Jason will help us out with that. So a little bit about us. We have about 150 people in Connecticut and 3 offices, Glastonbury, Cheshire, and New Haven. We provide a very deep bench of specialties, everything from traffic to micromobility to bicycle and pedestrian planning to natural and cultural resource evaluation, floodplain, climate assessment, climate adaptation, climate resilience. We bring all of that knowledge to our POCDs because we understand that these documents require a balance of pressures, and having that team in-house really helps us put together a comprehensive document that takes a look at all the different components of the things that Darian's going to want to review as part of the POCD. I should probably also mention you might know us as Mylona McBroom or MMI. We've been a firm, MMI and Mylona McBroom have been around for about 30 years practicing in Connecticut.
You changed your name, or?
We were acquired about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, by SLR, which is a larger consulting firm.
Okay. So you did a parking study for us way back when.
Probably, yeah. I mean, MMI has done a lot of work throughout coastal Connecticut, still does, right? But under the umbrella of SLR. We've stayed largely intact. It wasn't sort of a pull apart, put back together. It was a real sort of
Yeah,
successful
the school study,
acquisition.
right?
They do, I believe, some studies for the, is that Willamette Rome at one point work for the Board of Ed, maybe?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this is just our organizational chart for this project. And, you'll see, Nina would be principal in charge, myself as project manager, and then that first row is our core team, so GIS and spatial relations and technical editing, Stanley Goodman, community outreach, Robert would be our lead on community outreach, and we have additional planners, to really staff those open houses. As well as our planners will be working on the data analysis, data collection, and mapping for existing conditions and trends reports. And then our subject area experts, we have experts, as Nina stated, transportation mobility, landscape architecture, civil engineering, climate resilience, and sustainability. And, we consult these folks during the initial stages for gathering, relevant information, vulnerabilities, reviewing previous plans, as well as when you're moving towards the action development phase, they can bring in their expertise on best practices and tailor the recommendations to your community. It's taking a second to advance. There we go. So here's just a sampling of some of SLR's recent, in the last few years, POCD work, as well as other long-range and regional planning efforts. So one I want to highlight, we're currently completing the Town of New Canaan's Plan of Conservation and Development. It is in its draft form and undergoing its public review, and they're looking towards moving towards adoption in October. So that's been the last year or so of work. It's been a really great effort, and we're really proud of that report. I know the town is as well. So some other ones we wanted to highlight in sort of the Western Connecticut area. We recently worked with Norwalk on a sustainability and resilience plan with a focus on municipal capacity building. We are currently wrapping up a comprehensive zoning update for Stratford, which Robert has led. And then in Greenwich, the Greenwich Avenue downtown improvements was a streetscape improvement, mobility, and urban design project, as well as some regional tools that we're going to talk about a little bit later. The Climate Change Vulnerability Index is a very cool tool that SLR developed. And it is a statewide GIS database that combines information on social vulnerability, environmental vulnerability, and it's a great planning tool to help you pinpoint areas of concern and areas where you may want to focus some of your resiliency efforts. Okay, so in approaching this proposal for Darien, we reviewed your previous POCD and some other ongoing efforts. And these are the areas that we think are going to be a focus, as well as these are some of the ones you mentioned in your RFP as well. So, as a coastal community, strengthening coastal resilience is definitely very important, with increasing storms, increasing flooding events, thinking about resiliency throughout the town. And then considering the impacts of development, either new development. We have a lot of development that has recently occurred, is getting completed right now. So sort of reevaluating, thinking about impacts on infrastructure, and looking ahead the next 10 years, what type of infrastructure investments may be necessary. In terms of housing, exploring options for increased affordability, ensuring the housing stock meets the needs of your community and meets changing demographics. And then enhancing commercial districts. I know, the Corbin district and some of your other developments are really exciting in terms of enhancing those commercial districts. And you can sort of take that forward, looking at streetscapes, looking at transportation and mobility, walkability, to enhance those commercial districts further. And then, as always, it's a plan of conservation and development. So throughout, we want to balance development pressures, development initiatives with looking at sustainability and quality of life to ensure that Darien remains a great place to live. So looking at the data, some recent ACS and census data, we know the population has grown. That's fantastic, and it's grown, a little bit faster than the rest of the state. Some of that may have been exacerbated by the COVID shift out of the city, and then the population remains like mainly families with children. That's a large segment of the population. But there has been aging in the population, growing senior population, as well as an increase in some younger adults. So we'll want to think about how the housing stock is meeting the needs of that population. And looking at housing tenure, you can see you have great diversity in your housing stock in terms of renter occupied versus owner occupied, and that's increased over the last decade. And then looking at the housing market, we know this is a high income area with high home values. So that's something we'll want to investigate further in terms of the suitability for the population and looking forward to the future. So we just wanted to highlight a tool that we use called NearMap, which is a great satellite imagery software, and you can look back 10 years at, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, it's actually worldwide, but you can look back 10 years and look at now up until like the last few months to see how changes have occurred. So these are just, I know, some recent developments: Corbin, Heights Crossing, Darien Commons, major developments going on, as well as Great Island. I know you're undergoing the master planning effort right now. So these are just some ongoing initiatives and developments we wanted to highlight. And then here's NearMap, zoom in on, this is the Heights Crossing and Darien Commons area 10 years ago when you were just completing your POCD, and that is in October 2023. So it's a pretty cool before and after. And we can use some of these visuals throughout the plan and throughout the planning process to help you in your decision making. Okay, so our overall POCD process, we start with baseline review and assessment, some of what I had gone over already, digging into that data, looking at your previous plans. We'd also be conducting a community survey to gather data from the community. And then once we've really done a comprehensive gathering, we then analyze it and present it in a community profile and existing conditions report, which will have graphics and maps, and we'll present that to the community and to you as well to identify trends, to identify major areas we may want to focus on. And it's really helpful for sort of setting a baseline level of understanding among the community. Then we move into drafting the plan, the vision, as well as goals and strategies. And we'll have community engagement at key points throughout this process, which Robert will talk about a bit more. Working with the community, where do you want to be in 10 years? What's your vision and your values? And then the goals and strategies will come out of that. We then drill down even further into action steps and policies, and that's where we'd be talking to your town staff, talking with stakeholders, those who would be responsible for implementing some action steps to advance those and ensure they're implementable. And then we work with you through the final plan adoption, which includes the publishing of the draft report, public review period, review by regional planning agencies, as well as the final plan adoption. Okay, so I'm going to pass it to Robert.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Good evening. As you can see from our process slide that Julia just showed, a core component of our community planning efforts within our Connecticut SLR team is making sure that there's dedication and commitment to community engagement throughout the POCD process. We bring to the table a wealth of community engagement activities or events, and we're open to discussing a broad range of them. But for this particular proposal and for our previous experience that what has worked well with POCDs, we're suggesting that that we have 4 primary public engagement type of activities. First up would be a project website or what we call a story map, because we use ArcGIS platform, which makes creating a website that can be interactive and useful to the community throughout the project very easy to update and to utilize. And it's something that we've done for many communities, and we do have some examples that are in our proposal that you may have already looked at in advance. We also can take a look at one tonight if you would like for us to explore that a little bit more. But the story map or project website really allows for a lot of information to be shared with the community in a very transparent and accessible way. The next major task would be a community survey, our preference survey. We feel that that's very good to engage with the community early on to kind of see, to help you all also decide, because we would craft that community survey with your assistance to kind of figure out the questions and the topics that we would normally want to discuss with the community related to the POCD, but we could fine tune those questions so that they would be very Darien-centric. And the website would be a great platform where people could go to click onto that survey. It would be, we would use like a virtual platform like SurveyMonkey for people to access that very easy. We can also have hard copies available so that they can be posted at like senior centers or other locations. And we also have found that we can have QR codes made that would link directly to that to the survey on the project website. And those QR codes could be placed at things like at schools, major parks and facilities, that we would coordinate with you to figure out where those locations would be crucial. And people could actually scan that QR code and take the survey right while they're watching their kids play soccer or something like that. The other major tasks that we would be, or events that we would want to be focusing on for this would be what we would be the community open houses or workshops. We actually suggest that these, we are proposing 3. One that would be near the beginning of the process to kind of kick it off and to introduce the community to the POCD update. Probably the community survey would already have happened and we can share those results. And we can also start to identify where there might be mixed feelings within the community so that at the workshop we could have some activities that might help flush out those areas where there might be mixed feelings. Sometimes we find that, for instance, in housing, there might be like a wide range of options that people might want to consider. And at the workshop, we could zero in on that a little bit more clearly. A second workshop would be proposed in the middle part of the process to kind of get the community buy-in on the community vision statement and maybe themes as well as primary goals to kind of get their concurrence. And then lastly, we would come back in and check in with the community near the end in an open house to kind of share the, how that vision has been moved along with the goals and objectives, and then really get their buy-in on ideas for action steps. And the last major event that we would have would be what we call roundtable discussions. And this is really like internal to the town itself, the town staff, where we would want to meet with, have a group meeting so that the public works director, the town engineer, other boards and commissions can kind of come forward and we can share the community vision statement as well as some of the overarching strategies and goals and make sure that we're getting the linkages from what they're doing so that we can kind of move that forward and connect into the POCD. So as we then kind of transition away from like the community engagement, the topics that, as you probably are well aware, that we focus on in a POCD are really looking at those demographics of the community, how they might be shifting over the last 10 years. Obviously, land use and zoning play a major part because the 2 guiding documents or the growth management documents that the state requires are the POCD as well as the zoning regulations. So we want to make sure that that connection is made very strongly, as well as major components for the Planning and Zoning Commission for the next 10 years. But we're also going to be, as we talked about, looking at housing, economic development and employment, transportation and mobility, community services and infrastructure, which we know infrastructure and making that connection for grant funding and tapping it into your CIP are very important. And then looking at park and recreation and open space planning, as well as master plans for parks, cultural and historic resources, which we know are very important to Darien that we'd want to include linkages to, And then lastly, the growing segment of POCD updates in the state of Connecticut are really starting to focus on environment, sustainability, and resilience, and climate resilience. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark, who's going to talk a little bit about climate resilience and POCDs.
Sure, thanks, Robert. And yeah, it's really important that the plan of conservation and development have a climate resilience component. We know that's important to the town of Darien. We know it was emphasized in the previous plan, and we applaud you for continuing to be forward thinking. So I'll go through some of the components, or how how climate resilience is considered in the plan of conservation and development. And we start by understanding the vulnerabilities, and we have various tools to do that. What are the effects of climate change on the town, and how do you measure those? And I'll explain that a little more in the next slides. We want to leverage the strengths. We want to build off the existing strengths in the community, whether it's investments that the community has already made, or your parks, or your community leaders, and build on those strengths. We want to build on existing connections to other plans, or plans that are in the works, some of which Julia mentioned at the onset. Make sure they connect together. We want to prepare for regional shifts, especially as it relates to climate change. So, what are the factors of climate change that will influence a community like Darien? You're on the coast of Long Island Sound, so sea level rise and increased storm surges and coastal erosion are big considerations, and I'm sure you're dealing with some of those things now. Extreme heat, riverine flooding from the Goodwife's River or from smaller tributaries, and just intense rainfall events, pluvial flooding and flooding of streets, like you probably saw a few weeks ago on that Sunday afternoon flood that sort of caught everyone off guard. And then we want to maximize co-benefits. So how do, and there's some examples, I believe, on the next slide of co-benefits that go along. Not only are we, go ahead, not only are we, oh, sorry. So some of the tools, I'll get to the co-benefits, some of the tools that we use, and these examples are ones that we were directly involved in. So we mentioned the Resilient Connecticut and the CCVI earlier, which is the Community Climate Vulnerability Index. And this is an index of the entire state that we helped develop, that is a tool to evaluate the climate risks and vulnerabilities, and not just the more obvious impacts of climate change, like extreme heat or flooding, but how it affects the community, what aspects of the community are most vulnerable, and what sort of factors can mitigate that. And on a later slide, we'll zoom into it a little more. Yeah, if you go back one. And on the third graphic, there is the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan that Milone and McBroom, which is the previous incarnation of SLR, worked on for the Western COG. And then all the way on the right is a report that we prepared for looking at climate resiliency and historic resources, which we thought would be very relevant to this current plan. So this is zooming in on one of those CCVI sort of pixels on the graph, and this is the sort of information you could zoom in on anywhere in Connecticut, and we kind of chose this as an example in Darien. So here we're looking at extreme heat, and it gives a kind of a vulnerability score, and you can see on this slide sort of some of the factors that are going into that score, and it has to do with the community demographics. So who's most vulnerable to extreme heat? It's young children under the age of 5, and seniors who are living alone. So it kind of gives a weighting for those factors. And as you dig in, you can learn more information on each of these pixels. For example, one of the adaptive capacities for extreme heat is proximity to something like a swimming pool or a cooling center. So you get a score for that as well, and it's a great tool. So I mentioned the co-benefits. So some examples, a way to deal with extreme rainfall is to have infiltration areas, rain gardens, and these could be treat areas, and they're also sort of maybe a co-benefit of recreation, and maybe a co-benefit of shade, and there's countless examples of these types of co-benefits where you're sort of adapting and making the community more resilient to climate change, but also providing other benefits such as recreation. And I think with that slide, I'll turn it over to Nina.
So thank you, Mark. So that's it. That's our presentation. One of the reasons that we feel like we're a very good fit for this community because we've done a lot of these POCDs, but we've also been very thoughtful in preparing our proposal and our presentation tonight. We collect local knowledge. We mine the folks that know the community the most, which is you and the residents here, and work hand in hand with them throughout the POCD process. We're very collaborative. We like working with people. It's why we became planners in the first place. We have innovative tools, everything from the data tools, the analytics tools, but also the community engagement tools that are helpful when you're trying to reach people and sometimes explain what can be a very complicated analysis in language that people can understand. And we understand that this is a long-range process. It's a long-range planning document, but it's also we're going to be with you for the next 14 to 16 months, working hand in hand. And so it's important to build that trust up front, build that trust with the community up front, and work hand in hand with you for the next year. So with that, thank you. That's the end of our presentation, and we're happy to answer whatever questions you might have.
Fantastic, thank you. I do have a couple, I guess, overall arching questions, and then I want to make sure everybody on the commission gets a chance to answer questions. So if you could bear with us, that would be great. One of the things that I want to see, if we could do it, it's a request from a prior chairman. It's like a capacity study. It would be like a separate chapter for the report. And what I'm looking at is we built 800 multifamily units in the last 10 years or 5 years with more in the pipeline. Eventually, you're going to run out of space. You're going to run out of classrooms. You're going to run out of firemen. You're going to run out of EMTs. You're going to run out of sewers at some point in time. So what I want to be able to do, and if we could put a chapter in this thing, is to come up with a capacity study like that. We just built a new school. It was $75 million, right? So if we build, another 200 apartments, and then we're going to build another $75 million school, you're kind of running backwards. So is that something that you guys have done before, could think about doing? Does it make any sense? Am I off in left field?
That's something we do quite often for private development applications when, you're adding a large number of units. Usually town councils or planning and zoning commissions will want to know what's the impact going to be on schools. So we do that quite often. I recently took a closer look in Cheshire regarding school student generation, and we work with school districts often with Connecticut school district data to be able to look back, right? We can see, what your 800 units, how many students did that produce, and we can produce custom multipliers for your town.
The schools I kind of got a handle on.
Yeah.
The thing they don't have a handle on is the sewers,
infrastructure.
the fire department, and the EMTs. Like we added,
Okay.
and I'll get a little bit specific, but I just want to be able to see if I can get that, if it's something that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter was an EMT. We added another assisted living place, and the EMTs in town really couldn't handle it because, my grandmother kept falling. And every time they go to another one, and they said, you can't build another one of these things in town. And so that's a capacity issue.
Yeah, so we routinely do these. I mean, we do it sort of from a whole bunch of different angles, but we also do it holistically is anybody's familiar with the State Environmental Quality Review Act in New York State? It requires you to do these kinds of analyses no matter what action you're taking. So taking a look at long-term, what the impacts are on community facilities, that's not just providers like police, fire, and emergency. It's also libraries, community center, that sort of thing, making sure that you're meeting not only the required ratios, right? There's state set ratios for things like EMT, but also just do you have who's going there? How many people are going there? What's the demand? And are the facilities able to accommodate that? We also do it for schools, as Julia mentioned, but we also have InPlan, which is a tool that we frequently use, so that you can not only evaluate the impact of a build-out, right, the build-out analysis, what's that pressure on all of your services, but also what's the benefit, right? What is
That's
the
where I'm
money
going.
that some of those things are producing in terms of property tax revenue and spending and construction dollars, primary and secondary dollars. And Julia routinely runs those models for all sorts of types of projects so that you can figure out not only what the pressure is, but also what the relief valve is if there's money available to expand the capacity of some of those providers and some of those services. So yeah, we do it as part of zoning, right? If you're going to change your zoning to increase density somewhere, what's the build-out analysis and what's that going to do to traffic on a road, to utility, to water and sewer capacity, right? So taking a look at all of those different factors vis-a-vis projects and build-out scenarios is something that we routinely do.
Okay, because one thing is, at the sewer capacity level, and I want to move on to another topic, but on the sewer capacity level, Darien's basically tapped out. Right, and there's certain parts of town that are tapped out. So you got to tell somebody you can't change zoning there, but we don't have our own sewer plan.
Right.
We're like Wilton, and, because Wilton gets theirs from Norwalk, and we get ours from Stanford.
Yeah.
So unless Stanford builds a new plan, we're kind of toast.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all those things have to be taken in consideration. I was just wrap up. I know you wanted to go on, but I just wanted to say real quickly that most of those things that you talked about are the normal things that we would gather in our community profile and existing conditions. You know, we would gather that information because that's crucial for any POCD for any town.
Okay.
But then conversations that we would have in the roundtable meetings that I talked about, but we start that earlier, is that we need to find out from talking with, you know, the town engineer or public works, you know, they may already have some studies or information that we would want to make sure that we bring to your attention or that we explore further, or if those studies need to be further studied, you know, that's where we would make recommendations, you know, on capacity of existing infrastructure.
Okay, because that's the next thing I want to check on is our community loves to get involved. And you ask them a question, you're going to get 900 answers.
Wonderful.
Right? And in 3 meetings, you got no shot. But what we did last go around is we have boards and commissions and boards for everything. Right? Commission on Aging, Commission on Sewers, Commission on Parks and Rec, Board of this, you know. What you're going to land up doing is what I'd like to see you do is have a meeting with almost every single one of those boards. Because those guys, they all answer up to us. You know, I don't know what the sewer commission is doing. You know, they do what they do, and they tell us we're out of capacity, so we say, no, you're denied.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where how many boards and commissions do we have?
Oh, at least 20 or 30.
Yeah. So that's 20 or 30 meetings additional to the ones where, you know, you're in the auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you planned on in your fee analysis?
We included the roundtable discussions, which we sort of thought of as like aggregating some of those folks, some of the department staff, and, you know, potentially committees and boards in order to get feedback. We didn't budget to meet with them each individually, but I think there's an opportunity there to kind of look at how bring people in groups, or we've done meetings, we've done virtual meetings, we've done surveys, we've done all sorts of things. So, I mean, sort of defer to you on what normally works the best in order to get the best feedback.
What's Flip Hufford's commission?
He's on.
They're in the land trust.
He's with the land trust.
No, he's got some of his fancy
Coastal
one.
Waters.
That's it.
Oh,
Yeah. See, that's like, tomorrow is the Commission on Aging, and then there's the Coastal Waters Commission.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys have their own set of, and
Sure.
you're gonna meet with those guys. So that's where, I mean, I think your fee is like $140,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we add in another 20 meetings, that number's probably gonna change.
Yeah, it might.
Okay.
I mean, you know, when we respond, you know, we get the RFP and we respond the best way we can to what
Understood.
we
No, yeah,
think
no.
you would want, but we're obviously, right, we come, we talk to you, we meet at the beginning of the project, what kinds of things do you want to change, what do you want more of, what do you want less of? Again, you guys know your community better than we do, So we're happy to sort of pivot and adjust to make sure that we're reaching all the people that we need to
Then the
reach.
last question I have, and then I'll turn it over to the other guys, is do you get involved in the political landscape at all? Because Hartford tells us what to do all the time. And we've written letters and drafts, and, you know, they want to change zoning, get rid of single-family zoning, and make everything multifamily zoning. So that goes to
Do you mean as a
compassion.
firm or as in this
Does
process?
it get addressed in here? Like, you know, if we say we don't want to do anything, right? It's a sleepy town, we don't want to change anything, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but Hartford makes you reinvent the wheel.
I mean, it's a careful balancing act. I mean,
100%, it's hard, it's very
Right,
hard.
so I mean, you know, we give you, you know, we come to the table by giving you, we're here to guide you. We're not here to direct you or to, you know, force something on you from like a mandate from the state. We're here to just share that information. Ultimately, in the end of the day, it's your plan. We may caution you on something that may be controversial or you might want to think about, but, you know, we're here to partner with you and to guide you. And I think it is also important with the conversation we were just having is that, you know, this is the Planning and Zoning Commission's document, even though it represents for the whole town. And so, you know, what we have talked to about with other communities where they've asked that same question about, well, we need to make sure that we get the Conservation Committee or Commission involved and all that, is that is very important, and we are very flexible, but we have to make sure that it's clear that that it's Planning and Zoning Commission's document. So what we have also recommended for other communities is that maybe we send out notifications to all, like in the very beginning, that comes from like town administration or from you, that says, hey, we're updating the POCD. You know, we're going to be talking with you throughout the process. Make sure that you start talking as a group, as your commission or your board, and start bringing up ideas that you want us to consider. You know, so instead of necessarily maybe us going to each individual board, that they end up coming to us, meaning all of us, you know, because that keeps it in that frame that it's the Planning and Zoning Commission's document. If we go off and just talk with the Conservation Commission and you don't come or something like that, it's an odd connection because, you know, we're here to work with you. So we're flexible and we would help guide and come up with something unique, but we would definitely recommend that we try to get them to factor up to us rather than us factoring out to them.
Jamie?
I just wanted to follow up on, I had the same question as you about the impacts and the capacity. Just the last part of that section that you included in your presentation, it's number 4, I think in section 4. It says that if desired, SLR may work with the community to establish guidelines regarding how development applications are evaluated for impacts on infrastructure. So what would that look like in practice?
We've worked with, we work on the municipal side, sort of evaluating land development applications on your behalf. It's not part of the POCD process, but something that we frequently sort of put together a flow chart or a process, and so that when an application comes in front of this board, you're making sure that you're evaluating not only the recommendations in the POCD, but any other policy documents that you have adopted. So it sort of says like, all right, an application comes in, it needs to be evaluated in terms of utility capacity, it needs to be evaluated in terms of natural resource protection, and any other policy documents that have been adopted. It needs to be evaluated in terms of climate adaptation or impact on the environment. And so sort of putting together a process for you. If it's not working, we talk to folks right now, you know, as part of this process, what's working, what's not working, what do you want to see more of, what do you want to see less of, and then try to put together a plan that makes the process more efficient, not only for you, but also for the applicants.
Yeah, and it's based on, you know, what we hear from you. If you're struggling with a certain aspect of reviewing applications or compare, you know, a certain part of the POCD that you're not sure how it applies, you know, we really listen to what you're dealing with, what issues you're dealing with, and try to come up with some helpful solutions for implementing what's in the POCD.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to say, I looked at the survey of and the results that came back from New Canaan too, and I was really impressed with the amount of information that was collected. So.
Amy?
Yes. My biggest question for you is largely about process and where we are today assumptions that we're going to make and where the community is going to be in the future. We are largely at a state of inflection in our community. We're undergoing tremendous amount of development historically. And there's a whole host of assumptions that have to be made. Where do you have touch points in the future to the extent to say, yes, that's on track? There's a lot of retail, there's a lot of office, there's a lot of apartments, there's a lot of traffic, and all of those are layers and layers and layers of assumptions about what's going to happen coming in and out and in this community. So I can see, how do you make sure future testing happens to actuals versus assumptions, and how does that layer back in and reiterate to this plan over the duration of this development of this plan?
That's a tough question.
Well, yeah, I want to make sure I understand it. So,
A lot of moving parts.
Yes. So you mean throughout the plan development process, what are our touch points to?
Yeah, like for instance, you plan this to take 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got projects that some will be on board by then, some will be in flux by then, some won't be fully fleshed out. Like how do you turn it around to say, oops, we missed on that, and that was a major lever, and this plan is now, we've got to make amendments to this. Where's that process?
Yeah, so from just this POCD process, the way we look at data and look at the information, right? We have, not all the data sources are going to be updated to have the redevelopments,
Nobody
right?
knew COVID was going to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even just some of the projects that are on the horizon haven't been captured in the data yet. So we do our best to supplement, census data.
Do you
with
do stress
on-the-ground
testing with regards to, this development, you're about to bring on X amount of office space, X amount of retail, X amount of apartments, and we're stress testing to say it could look like here or here. And, in this capacity analysis specifically, and that could blow this out, or it could be just fine. And for us to understand that sensitivity, because we need to plan, there's additional pressures for us to make plans and change things in our community, and we have a lot to digest first. And that's, I think, my biggest concern about what this plan for this town is going to be over the next 10 years.
Yeah. Okay.
I think a lot of things will, while you're talking about very specific data, when we gather data for the community profile and we have some conversations about existing capacities, the state requires us to look carefully at sewer and water, for instance, just as one of those things. So we're going to have to partner very carefully, with the town's appropriate departments to give us information on that. We can also talk with the town planning and land use department to talk about, in approving of those projects, what kind of capacity was investigated to make sure that there was enough sewer capacity for that, or road capacity.
Road capacity is huge.
Yeah, so we can factor that in.
Water runoff. Huge.
And then, on the other end of the spectrum, when we have the community survey and we have the open house and those types of things, we're going to be getting,
You'll hear
we're going to be getting
That's why
feedback.
the whole QR code, man, you think
hear it.
Twitter's bad? You got no.
Right. Well, remember we did, just recently work in New Canaan.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, so we're ready because we know.
We got a lot of
We're well
feedback.
prepared.
Yeah.
We had over 1,200 people that responded to the community survey in New Canaan, which blew a volunteer survey out of the water. And we would imagine probably something very similar in Darien, and so we're excited about that.
Yeah.
We're excited to hear the different viewpoints and what people are thinking and how to try to balance that. And I think that at the community workshops, that's where we might be able to then see what we saw in the survey. What do we know about these projects that got approved and how they got approved, and what it's, how the systems and infrastructure in town are going to be affected. And what is the sense of the next couple of years, and maybe that can be an activity with the community at the workshops to kind of flesh that out. Are we at the capacity? Are we at the stopping point? Are we happy where we are? Or is there a little wiggle room? Is there a need for some more economic base, but on some kind of slightly different way or something like that? And and you being the Planning and Zoning Commission, you know the pressures that you've had from approving those projects and from reviewing them. So we're a sponge ready to soak all that up from you and then help guide you on that.
Okay, thank you. That was my main question.
Yeah, I've got two smaller questions. I don't think they'll be as long. So I think one of the main concerns, although we do have a lot of coastal resources and coastal erosion, we don't have a lot of like public coastal resources. So we only have two small sort of like public beaches. So the majority of our land is privately owned, so sort of out of our purview, except for residential applications. But one thing that I think will be very critical in terms of sort of, the environmental impact in this plan is flooding, right? We're at the lowest elevation from the giant slope of Danbury, essentially down here, and it's the number one complaint when there's even a hint of rain in the forecast is this floods. It never used to flood. It floods all the time now, right? So I think we really want to focus on that throughout this document more, probably than, let's say, a town like a Fairfield or like a Westport that has miles and miles of public beaches that they have to really worry about sort of erosion, and like we have beaches and we worry about it, but they're not really that big. So if you could just, touch on that. And then the other thing, I'll just ask them both, this way you can just fire and we can move on. I think that a huge part of this, just by coincidental nature, is going to be tying into the Great Island Master Plan. So I just want to, make sure that I think that the meeting, with the 20 different boards, I think, that could probably be, there's probably like 4 or 5, key boards that, key committees that I think you can meet. The rest we can sort of do that bubble up process, like the Committee on Aging, beautification, but certainly EPC, that might be a board, and, like the Sewer Commission, obviously. So I just want to make sure, how would you guys go about trying to tie in sort of the Great Island, because we have our own advisory committee on Great Island that's also concurrently drafting, right, a Great Island plan. So that's also, it goes to sort of Amy's question, where it's like there's other stuff in the wheels that also have to be included in this that we might not necessarily know. So how would you approach sort of like tying those two together?
So why don't you take flooding first?
Yeah, why don't I talk
Okay.
about
Yep.
flooding, you talk about Great Island, okay. Yeah, and that was great information, what you just told me about the coastal flooding and the concerns versus the street flooding or
Right.
neighborhood flooding, and that's, and we're hearing that a whole lot. It didn't used to flood and now it does, and so what's changed? Has anything changed, or did we just get rain events that are much more intense?
Right.
And that is challenging in a way, because like riverine flooding is, like, FEMA maps the flood zones, and you have those on a map. And I mean, you had asked about changes taking place sort of mid-study. I've seen cases where FEMA remaps, and then half the people are upset because now they're in the mapped flood zone and they have to pay flood insurance, but maybe they didn't get flooded. And other people are saying, well, why aren't I mapped in the flood zone? Because I get, everyone wants accurate maps, but they don't necessarily want to be
Nobody wants to be in a flood
pay
zone.
flood insurance, and nobody wants to get flooded. So, but the type of flooding from intense rain events could happen sort of anywhere. It's not mapped. It's kind of unpredictable. It just happens on a rainy day. So, it's tougher to address, but there are ways to address it. And some of the sort of co-benefit examples I gave. Ways to get the water to. And sometimes it's a matter of undersized infrastructure, storm drainage, and other times it's just intense rain, 10 inches in a few hours. And certainly hearing, and when people experience that, now you're dealing with the public that's sort of traumatized and gone through something, they've lost property and that sort of thing. So it certainly is an important part of the process. And having that input and knowing where to focus our effort is certainly key.
But in that one note, before you switch to the next thing, we had a flooding study done. It cost, I don't know, it cost $25,000. It's an $8 million fix, right? To fix somebody's house that's worth $600,000. They just bought the house, so it's a balance. We don't need to have another $25,000 flooding study done. But, I mean, I think it stands to reason you're going to want to review that and say, yeah, this is right.
Incorporate it. And then
Yeah,
By reference or something, and I don't see you guys as people that say, oh, it's $8 million. You know, on one of our biggest projects, which is, and I want to pass it on to George, one of our biggest projects is Darien Commons, right? That was designed about 18 years ago. There's a flooding component. There are 2 underground swimming pools built at that thing, Olympic-sized swimming pools underneath there that the developer paid for. You know, that's millions and millions of dollars.
You mean like for stormwater retention?
Yeah. They're
No one's
humongous.
actually swimming now.
They're 12 feet, they're 12 feet high.
Wow.
Right, that's why the thing sits so high up on the
see.
ground. But that's something, the town got that flooding fix for free.
Yeah.
But they also got 3.5 stories, you know? That's why when we go to a developer, we had one guy come in and we thought they were at sewer capacity, and they said, oh, we don't know if you are or not. It's a $10,000 study, you guys gotta pay for it, or else we're not approving it. And the guy went bananas. That's where the balance comes in. And
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is.
Well, if you already have a flooding study that's done, that's great, because then we can work with the
Right.
department that, you know, had that done, and we
Sure,
can make
commission.
sure that we're making that linkage, like we said. But if there's funding difficulties, that's where we can start to make sure that there's, you know, we pull out specific projects and highlight them for grant funding or for other, you know, funding sources that might be out there, because, you know, as you probably know, any kind of state grant, the first thing it says is this project in your POCD. So
Right.
we want to make sure that we make those linkages so that you can get grants or other funding sources easily to implement those type of other plans.
Because that's what I want to pass on, Drew, but one real quick thing. With regards to, you did the 2003 downtown Greenwich plan. If you go to the corner of Greenwich Avenue and Elm Street, all the sidewalks are all stamped asphalt, and it's really easy to, I don't know if you guys designed that or not, but the chairman of that said the state gave him the money as a grant. I think Westport did the same thing. The odd thing about Westport, it's Main Street in Westport, and it's also Elm. And they have all that stuff.
Yeah.
We need something like that in
Yeah,
town.
the Greenwich streetscape plan, that was, you know, done through our landscape architecture team, you know, helped design that after they had gotten grant funding for it, and then also for some of the improvements that went in.
And you did that after the COVID, when they shut down the streets and put all the restaurants in, right?
I mean, we were a partner in that effort, yes.
Okay, George, sorry.
Yeah.
Adam, did you get part 2?
Oh, no, yeah, part 2 is
Oh,
the.
sorry.
It's more for your knowledge. I want to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
that was scoped into like the
Yes.
point of work, because I can envision that being an entire chapter, if not 2, just on its own.
I think we envisioned that
We
as
did.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
And
that
that
was incorporated.
Also would be, you know, at one of the meetings, right, we would probably invite those folks to have a table and a presence, and we would ask their questions. We don't want to do meeting fatigue and ask people the same questions over and over again, so harnessing sort of what they've already learned and the folks that they've already spoken to and where they are in the process and building that into ours is something that we also imagine.
Yeah, that'd be, having those connected events would be really good.
What I think, as I was thinking before Adam asked the question, was we really don't want to duplicate the effort.
Right.
You know, so if, you know, you can cut and paste perhaps into the new report from what is being created by, may I say, a rather expensive master planning group and all that sort of thing. So we don't want to have to spend money, more money. The other question I want to ask is on a very basic level for my simple mind. We have a number of issues around town. You've heard about them, you've talked about them, and that's fine. So you will address them and you will guide us as to what we need to do. But is the ultimate mission to tell us where we're going to be in 10 years, or how to get to where we should be in 10 years, or, you know, these are things we could do if we want to be someplace in 10 years? What is this 10-year plan all about at a basic level?
Sure. So
Great question.
there's a few components. So, you know, we start with looking at the data and predicting as best we can what the trends are and what, you know, bringing you all the information that is available to think about the next 10 years, right? So that's identifying demographic changes, you know, flood vulnerability changes, flood vulnerability, and things that you are going to need to factor in that are maybe outside of your control, that are just going to, you know, it's a regional shift. Things are happening. And then I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But so after that, we are looking to you. So based on the existing conditions, based on the trends, where do you want to be in 10 years? And then from that, the goals, strategies, and actions are how do we get there. So it's two parts. It's what's going to happen that's out of your control, where do you want to be, and then what's in your control that can get you there.
So, so I think it's, it's a little of both, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're looking for you to tell us, everybody, to tell us where you want to be. Set your vision for the next 10 years, and then we work with the community and this board to help you get there, and we give you a bunch of different options on how to get there, put together a program on how to get there. We always include an implementation table at the end of our POCDs that sort of set what the goal is, the strategy is, who's going to be responsible for implementing that, and so that you can go back and you can check, to your point, right, like have in 1 year, in 2 years, what are those things that you've prioritized in your 10-year plan? Which ones are still relevant? Which ones have been accomplished? Which ones still need to be addressed? We give you a time frame and if necessary, a range of costs, right? Like we probably wouldn't go as far as to actually cost out some of the initiatives, but high, medium, low, what kind of resources would need to be allocated to that? And so in the end, you have where you want to go, how you can get there, how long it's going to take, and a real process so that you can track your progress.
Interesting, good, thank you.
Wow, these guys are just really smart. I know we have a lot of time to do, we could probably go on for this, but I think we did a good hour for us. We really appreciate all your time and effort into this. It's going to be a tough decision with us, but I can tell you, you guys know exactly what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. You have our contact information.
Yeah,
So.
we'll probably flow everything through Fred and he'll send them.
Those
out
were
to
good
you.
thought-provoking questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
it
you.
is. Okay, awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming out.
Yeah.
The example plans that are in the document that we sent, if anybody has any trouble with them, we can send like maybe PDFs to Fred and then maybe share them that way.
Could you have the QR codes, and if I click on the QR code, then I can?
Yeah, you should be able to, like, there's QR codes for some story map examples as well as some of the plan examples.
Okay.
But if you want to actually look at a hard copy, we could get a PDF.
Yeah, I'm a host. Because with QR code, you need your phone, right?
Very analog.
Where is your phone? How close to you is it?
I can read my phone,
There you go.
I'm gonna read a POCD on this thing?
Our proposal, I think, if you open up the PDF, if you click on it, then you can read it.
You go to it.
Yeah.
QR
Trust me, I
codes need to
said-
go the way of the dodo.
Oh, I don't think state of the art.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Yeah. There's nothing I love more than getting into a restaurant and scanning something,
Oh,
looking at the
no,
menu
no,
on my
no.
phone.
I know, just bananas.
Yeah, no.
Now my eyes are shot, I can't see.
It's on TV.
Do you guys want to put that on hold for a second? You
Back
have
on?
5.
Hold on, wait till he's back on.
Yeah, no, we're good now.
Okay.
Hi there. Welcome. We're the Planning and Zoning Commission. You have 5 out of 6 members here, and we're excited to see your presentation. I recognize Joe Canis. He's a frequent flyer to the office. Peace out. And if he's ever wrong, I get his first kid. So we got your presentation from BJF and Ty and Bond. It's very comprehensive, and the floor is yours. Take it away.
I think maybe we'll use the slideshow to just introduce ourselves.
Fantastic.
However you want.
So here we are. I'm Frank Fish. I'm on the upper left there. And I'll act as, if we were retained, I'll act as the principal for this. I've been here, well, I'm a native of Hartford and directing our Connecticut work since 1980. So I'm going to date myself a little bit. But I want to turn this to, who will be our project manager, Emily.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Tolbert. I'm a planner at BFJ Planning. I would act as the project manager if we were chosen. I work with Frank on a lot of these comprehensive plans, and so I have a lot of experience with that. I'm also a native of Connecticut. I was born in Hartford and I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, where my parents still live, so very familiar with Darien.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Frecker. I am an associate at BFJ Planning, and I'd be working specifically on the transportation chapter of the POCD, and kind of bringing in that expertise to the plan. My Connecticut experience includes working in Wilton, as well as Hartford, East Hartford, and Orange, Connecticut, as a few examples.
And I think you all know Joe, but Joe should introduce himself.
Good, Joe.
Joe Canis, I'm a principal engineer at Ty and Bond. Obviously, a lot of experience in stormwater management, infrastructure, floodplain management. I am not a native of Connecticut, and that's a younger picture of me on the lower left there.
And David.
My name is David Woods. I'm the principal of Greenwoods Associates. I spent 8 years as the deputy planning director for the city of Stamford. It's that monster to the left of you, which I'll be focusing a lot on housing affordability and visioning of housing plans, along with civic engagement and basically a subject matter expert for plans. I've done a lot of comprehensive plans. I've been POCDs also.
Thank you.
And then the team organization is just, you can see here, again, the core 3 people, myself, Emily, and Michelle. Gilman is not with us tonight, but would act as project planner working with Emily. And then on the right-hand side there, Mark would direct transportation and mobility, as he said. On the left is Jonathan Martin, who's not here, but heads up our urban design. And again, Jonathan would be involved if there's some urban design issues. We happened to look at one of the developments here when we were doing the form-based code for Wilton Center. And so Jonathan would be involved. He directed our design work in Wilton. And then there's 3 consultants, as you can see, in the center, Ty and Bond, who you know. But on the left is Tina Lund, who is an affiliate of ours, shares space with us, and she's a woman business enterprise. And her expertise is in economic development. And then David Woods would be involved in housing and community facilities. David has a tremendous amount of experience from not only Stamford, but from other municipalities and housing. So that's...
Quick thing.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, I've worked with, both as a consultant, teaming, but also as a project manager with BFJ for now 30 years. So
Yeah.
I'm aging myself too, but.
Yeah. No, this team, by the way, thank you, David. This team has all worked together. We have a long relationship with Ty and Bond here in Connecticut. And here's just some, this is a little bit of a commercial here, but I felt you ought to know something about us a little bit. Started in 1980. Our first big project was in Hartford's riverfront recapture. We did the plan back in the early 80s, and since that time, a lot of our work, it led to the Weathersfield POCD, the East Hartford POCD, the Bloomfield, the whole greater Hartford area. But we've expanded, and particularly now that our office is in Stamford, we've got a whole group of POCDs, which are all in green there, and then other planning projects in the more purple or red. But we've got 5 groups in the firm, very small groups, just planning and zoning. I tend to be, the group here tends to be involved in planning. We've got urban design headed up by Jonathan, who I mentioned earlier. And then environmental analysis, if needed. It's not always at the forefront, but we think it should be more at the forefront now in terms of sustainability efforts in communities. And then real estate through Tina at Urbanomics. And then Mark would take care of transportation planning. So those are the sort of 5 groups in our firm. I'll just highlight very briefly some projects here. Stanford, of course, next door. We did their comprehensive plan. And by the way, the other side of you here in Norwalk, these people are all references for us. In Norwalk, we've worked with them for the last 15 years in all the design reviews of their village districts, which is Rowayton and East Main Street. We're just finishing the East Hartford POCD now. It's our second POCD in East Hartford.
So you did theirs in like 2015?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, and then we're just finishing the new one.
2025?
Yeah, the draft is done. It's got to go to public hearing, but
Right.
I call it the hard work is done. New Canaan, by the way, given who was just before us, I happen to be fairly good friends with, over the years, with Nina Peak. So I want to be careful here not to take credit for the New Canaan POCD. We did the New Canaan Municipal Facilities Plan, and I think it came out very well because it led to a compromise. And that compromise was, instead of building a new municipal building, they added on to the current one. The first selectman at the time was an IBM kind of guy. He wanted to make sure all technology was in his building. We were able to show him that it could be, and by doing it that way, they would save a lot of money on other municipal facilities that they wouldn't have to do. And so, or they could retain everybody in those facilities. So New Canaan was good. We also did a downtown market study through Urbanomics there. Wilton Center we finished last year. It's it did lead to a form-based, it was a plan for downtown Wilton and also a form-based code. So we did both in that case. And Greenwich, we've just had a long history with. Again, we did about 4 of their neighborhood plans. For instance, Old Greenwich neighborhood plan. We've done a number of those plans and down to some level of design detail in Greenwich. And then Newtown, we are just, I'll be in Newtown Thursday night. We're having a final meeting before public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission up
Did
there.
you work on Byram at all in Greenwich?
By the way, Byram, except for the what's called their R6 zone in Byram, which I worked on that whole zone all along the I-95 corridor, but we did not do Byram's actual neighborhood plan. It was done by.
That's a good thing.
Okay, it was done. Oh, well, I shouldn't say who it was done by. He happened to be still is a friend of mine, but I won't mention the firm.
No, they're all friends.
But we did not do Byram, right? Yeah. So that's just some selected things on BFJ. Urbanomics, Tina could not be here tonight, but again, WB, a woman business enterprise, shares space with us. We're the other owner. She's the 51% owner. BFJ is the 49% owner. And we worked together again for 25 years. And so you can see some of the things she does here, some of her philosophy there on blending economic, social, and environmental areas. But she really does specialize in market financial feasibility, cost-benefit analysis, and also, quite frankly, school projections, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to turn this over.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, so a little bit about Ty and Bond. We're more than just stormwater management. We were actually founded in 1911 up in Holyoke, Mass. And we've grown to offices throughout New England as well as Eastern New York. I think we have 17 offices now. And you can see the whole suite of services that we offer in those bullet points. It's supported by 600 employees, so there's a lot of in-house knowledge that we can tap into. But really what we're here to assist the town with is with the coastal resiliency piece of this as well as the infrastructure. And and you can see for the pictures there, we do have waterfront projects that we've done. We've done from small discrete boat docks up to larger coastal studies. We did an entire coastal study for the town of Manchester by the Sea up in Massachusetts, where we looked at different alternatives. We also looked at the impact of sea level rise. In addition to sea level rise, we also looked at changing precipitation totals. So that was an example of some of the larger scale watershed planning work that we've done up there and that we're capable of. And we've recently bolstered our coastal experience. We brought on a firm from that merged with us out on the Cape. That's done quite a bit of work out there. The other piece of it is the infrastructure piece of it. And really, obviously here in Darien, a big concern, as we all know, is stormwater, is how to better manage that stormwater. We're currently writing a stormwater management manual for the town that's going to improve upon the existing regulations, because we have identified problems over the years, like some pump discharges is a big one, to better improve the, resiliency, reduce frequency of flooding, and just, opening up public facilities sooner after a flooding event. So those are the types of things that we can do for the town. And as you can see here, I'm obviously not going to go through every project, but we have quite a bit of experience throughout the town. From large projects like Darien High School to small, discrete one-lot reviews that we've done for the commission. So we know the town very well, and we obviously know the people on the boards and the commissions as well as staff. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David.
Yes, so Greenwoods Associates was founded in 1992. Gone in and out of the public sector in Greenwoods and put Greenwoods on the shelf when I've been public sector. As I said, I spent 8 years with the City of Stamford as the Deputy Planning Director, focusing on long-range planning.
Who was the mayor at the time?
David Martin. And I had a good relationship with him. He wanted me to make sure I get all the capital budget money that he wanted for everything. That was part of my job. And I was the project staff for the planning board. Stanford does as a dual system, planning board and zoning board. And for Stanford, it works fine. For most of the places in the state and the country, it would not, so honestly. And I worked with Frank as part on the project team in the subject matter for the 2015-2025 master plan. So I worked with them and Tina and others for that. So we do comprehensive plan and visioning, housing affordability for this project. Those are the two big things we're focusing on, along with capital facilities such as police, fire, EMT, and anything else that Emily wants me to do.
All right.
Good. And
so our understanding of this project is that you are in the process of updating your 2016 POCD. You want to incorporate some of these emerging priorities that you've listed for us in the RFP. We've listed them again here just as a reminder. We also understand that you would like to incorporate the Great Island Master Plan into this POCD update, and you would like us to consider recent planning initiatives at the local, regional, and state levels. You're also looking for an implementation plan and recommendations for monitoring and updating the POCD. Our approach to POCDs and comprehensive plans in general is to connect sustainability, community development, and economic development. We like to take a transparent approach where the public is involved throughout the process. We like to post documents online, keep the public up to date to gain trust and make sure that our plans are implementable. So we also take a results-driven approach. We don't want your plan to just sit on the shelf and never be opened. We want it to be something that people can understand and people can refer to and that is used. So this is our project scope and timeline. We're envisioning a 16-month process from similar sized towns and from other POCDs that we've worked on. 16 months tends to be a good number. And within the 16 months, we see tasks 1 and 2, project management and the community engagement and stakeholder involvement, as things that would be ongoing throughout the project. Those would include things like our project management plan, a public survey and online engagement, public workshops, and a community engagement summary report. In tasks 3 and 4, those would be in the first 1 to 3 months. We would be collecting data, developing maps, and kind of establishing an existing conditions report that could be presented at the first public workshop. And that's kind of where we would kick off our vision and goal setting phase of the project. And that would go on throughout month 9, where we would test out those ideas and recommendations at the next public workshop. We would be drafting the POCD chapters for the first 9 months of this project, and then it would go for public review at that public workshop, and then we would make revisions before moving towards the final plan. Connecticut state statutes require a 65-day review period and a public hearing, and following that, we would hope to have plan adoption around month 16. From the RFP, we saw that task 9 was the implementation strategy, so we could see that as being a standalone deliverable after the adoption of the plan, or if you want it to be incorporated in the plan, it could be something that happens towards the end of the process, so we know what we're actually recommending and how we would go about recommending that those ideas are implemented. This is your POCD organization from your 2016 plan. And we are completely comfortable with keeping this format if that's what you would like. We're also open to discussion if you want to change any of this formatting to incorporate those other elements that you've highlighted. Yeah. And another thing I just wanted to say about this is we like to review these POCD chapters with you, the Planning and Zoning Commission, or with a standalone committee that's appointed throughout the process so that things are being reviewed one at a time. We also like to post them online so that the public can review them. So once we have approval from the town, that gives a chance for people to kind of consume all of this information in smaller bite-sized chunks and keep them informed. Our community engagement approach, we're kind of envisioning a few different dynamic public workshops that would be interactive, they would be informative. The first one would allow for us to develop a shared vision with the community, whereas later in the process, our workshop would allow the community to react to what we're proposing. We also like to mix in some online engagement. We've gotten very good at this since the pandemic. We use tools like Social Pinpoint and SurveyMonkey. Social Pinpoint, for those who aren't familiar, allows you to have this kind of virtual ideas wall where people can post comments. It would be monitored and people can, upvote and downvote comments. Also, it allows you to use an interactive map where people can actually post the comments on the map. And we also do SurveyMonkey surveys to get a more targeted, tabulatable results to our surveys.
All right, so before to Emily's point about plans that are legible and kind of accessible to the public, we just wanted to convey here that it really excites us as planners to have plans that are legible, convey different complex ideas and concepts. So we are fully prepared to kind of assemble a number of different graphics, whether it's maps, diagrammatic pieces, or sketches. Frank mentioned that Jonathan Martin is on the team as an urban designer. He's fully on board to help out with some of those more advanced urban design concepts. But otherwise, our team in general is very prepared, across the board with graphic capabilities to assemble. I'll just mention, we know it's the intention to assemble the plan in Word, Microsoft Word. We have a lot of experience with Microsoft Word. We're, fully prepared to do that. We've done that with other plans, but that provides a lot of flexibility to pull in other graphics. So we are ready to do so. Here, we just wanted to really reiterate that, across chapters, across themes, we see sustainability, resilience, and mobility as a kind of common thread that we can weave into different elements of the plan. We know that these will be in the respective chapters, sustainability and resilience, as well as mobility in the transportation chapter. But here we just want to emphasize that, this is really our approach to engage the public and stakeholders in an understanding of data and analysis, to really understand issues of sustainability and resiliency, to move forward from, and to kind of ask the right questions and make sure that things are addressed properly. But generally, we will work in tandem with Tie and Bond on coastal resiliency components and infrastructure in relation to resiliency and sustainability. We also feel that, oftentimes mobility is a really important piece of sustainability. And in general, my role largely will be focusing on the transportation chapter, but there's an opportunity to look further into, pedestrian safety, complete streets approaches, any TOD kind of approaches, and just generally streets that are safe for all users.
And then I just wanted to end on a couple of slides. One important slide we think is implementation, not only just the future land use plan, as this happens to be from Meriden's plan that we did with them, but on the right-hand side, this is being reviewed Thursday night actually in Newtown, Connecticut, where we try to do an implementation chart. And that is, what are the priorities? Is it a short-term one, medium-term? What's an estimated cost to it? So that we can get a document that has steps to it. And if you choose, if P&Z chooses, some communities have done this, they would check themselves at one meeting once a year, or maybe once every 2 years, to see against the chart like this, well, how are we doing? Were we able to accomplish this? So we found it helpful to have this implementation chapter, which has leads to, from the future land use plan, it's going to lead, it may lead, may not. There's one or two communities we've worked in recently that there's no zoning changes being proposed at all. But in several, there have been some zoning changes, so we telegraph those changes. Then the other thing is the capital budget, which is kind of critical. We learned this kind of in New Canaan. You would think that, a town like New Canaan, or at least I did, maybe I was a little naive, but having come out of the fiscal prudence of, I would say, the Connecticut Yankee kind of sense that I grew up with in Hartford, New Canaan had that sense, and we met the opening workshop in New Canaan was one of almost, you could sense the hostility. They were not happy with where they thought things were going in terms of their capital budget and its impact on taxes. And I think what we finally came up with did meet the first selectman's goals, but in a different way. And it was in addition to the town hall, and we could preserve the historic structure, because the historic group in New Canaan was fairly strong. They didn't want that torn down. So I think we came up with a good compromise, but it was more than just that on town hall. It was also how it reverberated to the other facilities in the town. So the capital budget, we learned, or I learned, is not just something we had to be careful of in Bridgeport or Stamford, but careful of in every community, careful of in a community like New Canaan. And so it's a very important, I think, chapter here, and we take it kind of seriously at the end and try to leave enough of our budget to that chapter. And then finally, I just wanted to end on that cost proposal. We tried to stay within the budget you outlined and do this in $125,000 for the budget, do it within 16 months. I think if you check our references, you may have done that already, we take it seriously. We want to really try to stay on the timeline. And of course, there's an obvious reason for us to do that, and that is time is, I know it's a cliche, but time really is money to someone like, or whoever you hire. And so there's a real built-in incentive for us to try to stay on time and therefore try to stay within budget. And then we did allocate that $10,000 to the Phase 9, which it appeared to us the implementation strategy you wanted as a separate document. So that's the overall, by the way, our exact allocation of budget here is all, up to you, really. So, and then the final slide is just kind of just our commitment. We do have, we think, we hope, a very good, planning experience here in the state from 1980 on, with about 25 different, maybe at this point 26, 27 POCDs, and we hope, particularly as a result of COVID, we really spent the time and effort, and I'm going to credit our younger staff here for doing that, putting us into a position where we're online we have the tools to develop engagement, as both Mark and Emily said. And we create those plans. We hope now in a more visual way for people. And I think I can say this, where I grew up in education that started with declining sentences and real focus on the English language and so on, but we're finding more and more that people are reading plans on different levels. One level is skimming through, gathering the key points of the plan, those that are emphasized graphically, and then others, as yourselves, I'm sure will do, you're reading every sentence of it, but it's got to be somewhat graphically done these days to, I think, to communicate well, put it that way. And then we have the capacity to complete this project basically in-house, with one exception. We are not engineers, and that's why we have Joe. And then the people that are here, we are not, I'll use another, we are not AECOM with 15,000 people. We're 25 people. Who you see here, you're going to get, you actually are going to get our senior, yes, that's true. You're going to get our senior level commitment. And so we would end with that and turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. Just a threshold question, relative to the engagement meetings, how many of those do you envision that you typically have? Do you have 1, do you have 10, do you have?
So we typically have 2 public workshops in our comprehensive planning process. We like to have one that's about 3 months in. Once we've kind of established that baseline, we understand the existing conditions at that point. We understand your existing zoning and your land use. We've looked at the socioeconomic data, and at that point we can kind of come to the public, present to them what the actual comprehensive plan process is about, what's going to be in the plan, also some of those existing conditions points, and start engaging with them in a conversation about the vision that they have for their community for the next 10 years. And that's where we start setting the goals. And then we like to have a survey in the middle period of that, where we can kind of build on those questions and get more information from the public. And then we have a second public workshop where we've mostly completed the full draft of the plan, and that allows the community to react to what we're saying. So we often have stations with boards that show some of the recommendations and allow people to directly say, no, I don't agree with that, no, I don't like that, I don't think that works for our community. And then after that, we can make revisions to the plan. And then again, we engage with the public at the public hearing. So the public hearing wouldn't have that kind of interactive dynamic. It would just be people coming up to the stand and telling us what they think.
This second meeting, what month is that? Because it's over 16
if you turn to, or Emily,
because
you can
there is
Yeah, I'll bring back the slide.
we'll bring back
I think we
the
put it
slide.
around the end of month 9 and the beginning of month 10. So that the idea with that is that we've drafted those POCD chapters, and we can talk about the content of each of the chapters and the recommendations for each of those topic areas, so that people can react to everything.
Because you might have to add a couple of meetings. The other thing, and
We're flexible on that, first of
Yeah.
all. But secondly, we'll work with that. I mean, if month 9 is in July, that's probably not when you want to have it.
right, no, yeah, don't have it in
First of all,
August.
it's too
No, we
hot.
wouldn't do that.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that, so we would work with you on it.
Okay. Because it's, in our town, people come out of the woodworks to talk about stuff. The thing that me personally I don't like is all the online stuff, because you're gonna get people that don't even live in Darien say, you want beer coming out of the water fountains on Main Street or something like that.
Yeah, no, by the way, that's
That's
fine.
the part
We've done
that-
it both ways with an emphasis on, the actual in-person workshops.
Yeah, you gotta do both. as well.
We've just proposed here to do both, but
Right.
we can do the emphasis the way you would like. I would warn about one thing, and we learned this a little bit the hard way. This wasn't in Connecticut. It was in Mount Kisco, although they remain a very good reference for us. In doing their comprehensive plan, they had that view. We did 5 workshops. 2 of them were on Saturdays, and one got into a design charrette for the downtown. And the mayor finally said to me, because the attendance, she was a great mayor, she watched the attendance go from about 150 in the opening workshop to about 125. It was very good, second workshop. Then we went into a third workshop and went down about 75. And by the time we got to the 5th workshop, she called it planning fatigue. I'm not saying that would happen
I
here.
get it.
I'm not saying that would happen here. But you need to be careful of it because public outreach also, it's well done, particularly those workshops. They're not just, they don't come out of nowhere. They take preparation, time.
Yeah, no.
In other words, they cost money.
But that's why I was
Yeah.
looking at your
Yeah.
budgets, because
Yeah.
if you only plan for
Yeah.
one or two,
Yeah. No,
and
we
it's
plan-
$22,000, then.
Yeah, there's
If you
money.
had two more, it's gonna go from 22 to 42.
Yeah, and we, by the way, we've run into situations where there was a particular issue. So we're flexible on an issue. We have to have a special workshop. We would do that. We would do that. But we usually start off with the two because every time I do three, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do three, I run into this kind of planning fatigue with people. That may not be the case here, and it wasn't, I'll tell you one place it was never the case, I guess, was Westport. We once got into, I can't believe we
Did you do Saugatuck? Did you do
No, we
Saugatuck?
did not do Saugatuck. We didn't do it, but we did do some downtown work for them, and I remember my partner, Paul Bucker, saying, Frank, you're coming with me, right? They have set up 70 stakeholder meetings in 2 days. And, just to take notes from those and to make sense out of those, but we did it. But we would like to do it on a more, workable basis.
Right, no, but
Yeah.
Bedford Square and Elm Street and Main Street came out perfect.
Yeah.
That's great, and that was a big planning effort because
Yeah.
they had to do the landscape.
Right.
But let me ask a couple threshold questions. One of the items that came up is what we're kind of sort of terming capacity study. Darien's built about 800 apartments in the last, 5 years or 8 years, whatever it is. For us, I pulled Clean My Garage. We started the Corbin District in 2015. In August of 2015, it's now August of 2014, and there's 3 buildings are up. There's 7 to go. But what I'm trying to get to is we need to have some kind of capacity study, because eventually we're going to run out of sewer space, we're going to run out of classroom space, we're going to run out of fire department. Someone's going to say, oh, you're going to hire 10 more cops, and you have to have a paid fire department and a paid EMT. If we as a planning commission do that, I'll be living in Mount Kisco tomorrow. And that's an issue. Plus, relative to like water and sewer, more sewer than anything, we don't control our own sewer system. It's done by Stanford. Norwalk controls Wilton sewer system. The difference between Darien and Wilton is night and day. So can you incorporate, or do you know what I'm talking about relative to a capacity study? Is that something we can
Yeah,
have
I
a
think
chapter on?
It is. In fact, although you're very different than Wilton, they asked the same question. They
Right,
said-
like Wilton's got a declining school population.
Right.
They've got empty
Yeah,
seats.
Yeah, but,
We've got 22 kids in a classroom. If
Yeah.
we go to 24 kids in a classroom, I want to get taken up
Yeah.
out of the woodshed.
yeah. We've got the capacity to look at that. As I said, well, a couple of things. One, with Ty and Bond, we can look at that sewer issue and water issue. We did that in a different status in Wilton because they don't control where it's going.
Right, there's from Norwalk.
Norwalk controls, so.
And Norwalk built the sewer
And-
plant and didn't give them any capacity.
Right, and what we did there too is look at absorption. Tina Lund, urbanomics on our team, she does population projection, she does that type of projection out based on, we're looking at a number of factors. One of them, by the way, is the school district's own projections and what's been happening. And she does projections for school districts, so she's able to look at that kind of data. And we've done them for a number of school districts, some of whom are in your position.
Because what I was saying earlier is that if we add all this population, and special kids, Darien is the youngest demographic town in the state. We have the most, with the youngest, I'm 50-something now, but the majority of the town are in their 40s or 30s. And all those guys got kids.
Right.
At one point in time, the commission, I think every single person on the commission had 4 kids in the school district. We got the school district, I think, okay, the number of seats and the chairs, but the thing
Right.
that I'm nervous about is, the fire department, the police department, and the EMS department.
Yeah.
And if we run out of capacity, and you're gonna start hiring people, a school costs $75 million, right? We built.
And you're lucky if it's that.
Right, we built a $150 million shopping center in town. The taxes for the $150 million shop does not cover the cost of the school.
Yeah.
You know, so you're going backwards. That's where the capacity study comes in. The other question I want to ask is, we get a lot of pressure from Hartford to do certain things. And there's a balance there. I mean, Hartford, Wilton, for example, they want population to come in, so they changed their zoning code to make their buildings go to 5 stories. Rich Summit is a great guy, right? He loves it, he's an architect. He wants more young people there, so they made their buildings 5 stories. We're not doing that.
Right, right.
You know,
By
they
the
did
way,
for
that
reason-
was a
they-
giant-
All of Danbury Road's being changed. I mean, you said you worked on Wilton Center. Did you work on the Common Fund building at 15 Danbury Road?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Right, they're converting all their.
All of that to
office buildings.
residential, right. And as you say, slightly different situation. They have capacity in the school district. The capacity we started looking at, though, was also water and sewer.
Right, they don't have any sewer.
And that's their issue. So, but we did figure that out for them. We figured out the school system for them. We also figured out the absorption rate, warning them that, look, there's got to be a market out there, too. And I think that's less of an issue here in terms of the real estate market. You got a
Right.
very good real estate market, but.
They give, you know, they have houses that sold for $2.2 million today. You can't give them away for $1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that's the difference. But let me pass it down to George. Why don't you go first with any questions?
I didn't have anything burning at the moment, so go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think, you know, the pain points of the town, sort of the infrastructure, the capacity, you know, Joe is pretty well versed in sort of that. I'd say in addition to coastal resources, you know, flooding is obviously, right, everybody complains about it. So I think somewhere in the plan, we'd like to somehow think about what we can do, because people are looking for solutions, even if they are almost impossible to provide to them. So that would be, you know, kind of the only thing I would want to focus on, apart from, you know, everything that you've said before.
Yeah, no, you know, certainly I've been, you know, plenty of public hearings where, you know, the concerns are usually always the same. It's drainage, traffic, right? Sometimes noise, but, you know, usually drainage and traffic are the top concerns, right? And, you know, there are a number of things that you can do, you know, from a planning perspective. You know, it's taking a look at your regulations, you know, aligning them with, you know, the state, and, you know, identifying, you know, what your problem areas are, and, you know, tailoring your regulation to address some of those problems. You know, one of the things that, you know, hurts Darien in terms of stormwater management is that the soils here are not great. I mean, there's nothing that, you know, you can do to improve the soils here, where you're kind of stuck with what you have geologically, and it's just, you know, crafting your regulations to work around that, you know, encouraging, you know, maybe larger infiltration systems, or, you know, other or controlling runoff at the source. You know, instead of like a large central system, you know, maybe you divide it up, you know. So those are all things that, you know, could be looked at in the context of stormwater management. And in terms of flooding, you know, the problem with flooding, especially coastal flooding, it's a dynamic in nature, right? So, you know, sea levels are rising, you know, precipitation levels are rising. So a lot of times what you see in the, you know, represented on the flood maps, that's not current risk, that's really historic risk, right? And, you know, trying to deal with that. Yeah. So there's all sorts of different avenues that you could take a look at to help, you know, really craft and, you know, an approach to that sort of flooding issue.
Okay. Amy?
My biggest concern is when you look at the process, it starts with an evaluation of existing conditions. And the existing conditions of our town are largely in flux. So we are about to, you know, we are delivering large-scale development projects for us, for our little town. And underneath all of that were a host of assumptions that were made that may or may not be true. So my challenge in evaluating a town plan of conservation and development is, where is the stress testing and sensitivity around you think you're bringing in this much office space, this much apartments, you think this is what the traffic's going to be, you think this is what the runoff's going to be, and hey, were we right? Were we directionally right, or did we miss the mark? And building a plan off of that basis is, I guess, my challenge to you and how you would handle that.
Yeah, I'll start answering that one. So I think what we mean in those first 3 months where we're saying current conditions, trends, update and create maps, what we typically do in our plans is we have this kind of snapshot document that is mostly just the socioeconomic data. So we have that from the most recent census, the most recent ACS surveys and other sources, and also a review of your existing land use patterns and your existing zoning. It's not getting into all the detail of like the current traffic conditions and things like that. Those are being evaluated throughout that full 9-month process as we're developing those individual chapters. And since we do have experts on our team from all of these different categories of like economic development, of housing, of transportation, of infrastructure, we can all be working on those sections simultaneously throughout that period, so that those chapters are being developed over that time.
I would greatly anticipate that the community feedback and input that you're going to get is people are going to say, no more.
No more.
No more development.
That will not be a new thing for us to experience,
And so
I'm sure. I happen to live in Madison.
We need to understand if that, the basis on how to make informed decisions on that. And I think for me personally, that's going to be a very important component of the plan.
And if I can add too, just to your point about being in flux and what that kind of means, I think that's also the value of presenting data to the committee and to the public is any kind of reactions, or if there's things that stick out to folks, that gets highlighted and that gets talked about if there's any concerns with the data.
Just along the lines of what you were just saying, do you have an example of a survey that you've sent out to the community members with the sample questions and?
Yeah, we could.
Because I think that would be helpful.
We can provide you with that, or we'll provide you with a survey, maybe a couple of them. We do them both ways through, an engagement approach like this one, a social pinpoint, or I happen to like something that's tabulated easily and not open-ended questions where it can be tabulated. We can do both, but SurveyMonkey provides that type of approach, and we like to do it over, like a 6-week period between after the first workshop, so we can publicize it well. And then we can also tailor the questions. And by the way, tailor the questions with your involvement. We like to make sure that you, the P&Z, are always reviewing all of this before it goes live. And then put it up there online. And also, we like to do hard copies, especially for parts of your community that may not be quite as adept at the computer, and that sometimes is, I don't want to.
You can say the senior center.
Yeah, it's the senior. It's more the senior.
These guys got more iPads than we do.
Yeah, in other words, I'll use my own example here. They're better at this than I am. So we can hit both. We will do online, but we will also provide hard copies, usually in the library, other places that, senior center, for instance, so that people have access to both. We just have to be careful of the hard copies so that they're all numbered. We want to have an accurate compilation of responses. So we're very committed to that. We like to do that.
Just one more short question. Who and how many people are usually on the POCD committee?
We're just going through this in Brookfield. And I like to recommend that if you're going to do a committee, that it not be...
Not on our side. You're staring at the committee.
Oh.
You think on their side or on our side?
Well, it wasn't clear if it would just be planning and zoning or if there would be other members on the POCD committee.
We've done it both ways. It could be just P&Z. We've done a lot of plans just with a P&Z. I don't mean to sound just P&Z.
No.
You are the key. You are the key. We could do it with you, P&Z. Or we just are going through this up in Brookfield. They're weighing the pros and cons of this. Whether they're different than you. They have a planning commission. They also have a zoning commission. And by referendum, they have decided to merge the two in about a year and a half, I believe. And at any rate, the planning, so we've had this discussion. There's going to be, the planning commission has 5 members. They're going to have 4 members on their committee. Then they're going to have 1 member from the zoning commission because they will be merged. Going to have 1 member, and this was their idea. They're going to have, they said to me, it's a POCD. They said, well, we ought to have someone from the D, development, and someone from the Conservation Commission,
Right, yeah.
the C. So they've got a 7-member committee controlled, but the real votes there, 4 are coming from the Planning Commission. The thing I would urge is, if you do decide to do a committee, we're comfortable either way. So you could do this just with you, but if you do a committee, and state law is very opening to that committee approach. The state also mentions, hey, that gives you the opportunity to put on some other people that may represent from the Chamber of Commerce to land trust to, so you might get that. I would urge you, though, if you do that, keep the committee manageable. We once had a committee that had 25 people on it. It just doesn't work.
But I'm going to spin it a different way. We've got probably 20 boards and commissions, from historic and monuments to graveyards, to environmental protection, sustainability, Commission on Aging. The list goes on and on and on. The last time we did it, the POCD people, I think, met with like monuments and ceremonies. There's a chapter inside our POCD that talks about the cemeteries. There's like 16 cemeteries in town, and the consultant met with all those committees and got their input.
Yes.
So that's additional meetings. Like you can go to the Commission on Aging meeting is tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. You can go there and they'll tell you exactly what they want.
Yeah, and we're in the process of doing that right now in Orange, Connecticut. And we call them stakeholder meetings, we just happen to use that word. But we like to meet with the heads of your departments, police, fire. We like to meet with those committees. But those are meetings that we assume in our...
That's all factored into your price.
That's all factored into the price, that's right, yeah.
And it's a lot easier to do those types of meetings.
That's what I'm
Have
talking
big
about,
public meetings. Yeah.
Because
We
those,
could separate-
if you get
each one of us could do one.
Yeah, if you get put on a certain boards and commission, you're vested in that. Plus, you're not the person that moved into town, in August, and now is the biggest person that's giving you input for the town planning conservation.
Right, and we meet with those, and we usually like to then test those later. I don't want to use any department as an example, but the classic is that the fire department will tell you, well, we may need a new firehouse, or we may need a new fire truck.
Oh, no, they did that last time.
Okay, you did that.
100% did it last time.
Yeah, so
And
we would
both
do
firehouses
that.
getting
But what we like to do is check in with the first selectman and your chief financial operating officer, that kind of thing, to make sure that, hey, what they're asking for, it hasn't been denied 3 times before, or, that kind of thing. So we like to check in also, like we're doing that right now in Granby. We've gone through so far about 10 different commissions, police department, fire department, but now coming up on September 30th is the meeting with the first selectman and chief financial officer of the town, and the police department has already said, no, they vetoed this twice. So we want to get a sense of budget and what's capable of doing. And we usually work with the town planner has set up many of these meetings, so that we will work with the town, work through your planning department, and get those meetings set up. We'll sometimes do them now on Zoom because they're easier to set up. We just met by Zoom with the fire chief. We met with the police chief, his assistant, and so we'll do that as part of our normal work.
Just so you know, for 8 years, working on the capital budget, every year the fire department asked for a new fire truck, at least one, and they got one in those 8 years.
Yeah, in the last 5 years, I think we bought 3.
Okay.
And they just gave the other one to somebody up in Maine.
Oh, wow.
Relative to mobility, 2 things. One is there's been a master plan for a bike path from New Canaan to Darien for a quadrillion years. I've never seen the plan, but everyone always talks about it. Is that something that falls under your purview? And then the second question is, I mean, we love our town where it is, but there's Norwalk on one side and there's Stanford on the other side. And right now, Norwalk is on the Post Road. I mean, on Connecticut Avenue is kind of sort of blowing up. With you got Target going in, you got Target going in, you got Wegmans going in, you got Costco redoing it, you got Chick-fil-A. That matters to us, right? But we can't control it. But when we're doing, the planning for, a car wash or a dealer or a 7-Eleven, that we look to that. That's what matters.
Yeah, no, a couple of thoughts.
We need something in planning zoning in the POCD that says,
Yeah.
we have to be able to point to something if there's a denial or approval.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. So to the first point about the bike path that you mentioned, I mean, we absolutely would take into account any existing bicycle infrastructure in the town, right? And to the point of future connections, that is a detail that we are willing to, we're able to map and think of what future connections can look at as a long-term strategy. Of course, in some cases that involves further study for recommendation, but we do like to kind of highlight those opportunities whenever we can, for longer range planning. To the point about, corridors in general, kind of tied to, commercial uses and starting communities, I would say that generally, we do take a data-driven approach in a lot of our, roadway analysis. And if we follow a complete streets kind of approach and look at roadway safety, one of the ways that we do that is through looking at crash data. It's not the end-all be-all, but it is a way that we can gather the data. The data often speak for themselves, and we can obtain the most recent data, of course. And that is a way to just see where there are hotspots of accidents occurring, whether it's pedestrian-related accidents, bicycle-related accidents, or vehicular, and using that as a baseline. And that, again, is a case where we can kind of check in with stakeholders, the community about these areas, and kind of develop a better idea of what strategies could be developed, whether it's traffic calming, whether it's other complete streets approaches, but to take a comprehensive approach in that regard.
Yeah, because in our town, we don't have any traffic calming on the Post Road. In Greenwich, all the other towns, in our peer district, like Wilton, New Canaan, Greenwich, Old Greenwich, none of their central business districts are around the Post Road.
Yeah.
They're on the side streets.
Yeah.
I happen to live in a community that is like you. I live in Madison. Route 1 runs right through.
Right, Madison
just
Orange,
as it does. Run right through our town. What Madison did, I take no credit for this, I just happen to be a resident in Madison, but they went to the state and said, look, we'd like a median. We want to slow, they knew a median as a traffic calming technique, we'd be able to slow down traffic. And the state at first said no, but when Madison stepped up and said, we'll pay for it and we'll maintain it, the attitude became a little different at DOT.
You just asked the state for a traffic light?
Yeah.
And said, we'll pay for it?
That's a little.
The state said no.
Yeah, that's a little different. They have to, well, also as Ty and Bond knows, they have to go through a warrant process for a traffic light, and if it fails the warrant process, they're not going to spend the money, no matter almost who you are. But we find that sometimes dealing with them, Madison did get this, so it's not easy with conduct. I don't want to say it is. We dealt with them for about 40 years, and Ty and Bond's been dealing with them for a long time. So I think we can provide advice on how, what works, what doesn't work, what their limits are. They've become open to certain things. I just saw it on Route 1 in Orange. Suddenly, they wouldn't have considered sidewalks before. This is Orange, so it's different.
But they did it in Stanford. They did it in Stanford where WWE is.
Yes.
There's an island right in the middle with a stop sign and a crosswalk that's in the middle of nowhere because there used to be a cop there. Now there's an island.
Yeah.
And
By the way,
it's probably under your watch.
We're familiar with that exact end. That's where our Stanford office is.
But that is one of the power of POCDs is to kind of, really
Correct.
bring these issues to the county, to the state, and to really make sure that there's a clear vision set forth and that there's an argument on the table.
You got to remember, DOT, even though it's come a long ways, it's grudgingly, it still sees its mission as moving cars as fast as they can on the state roads.
Right, because like we have railroad bridges at Leroy Avenue.
Leroy.
That's, a car and a half wide.
Yeah.
If we get on the list to get that thing widened, we get right to the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
There's a culvert connects Old Kings Highway South with Old Kings Highway North. That was in the last POCD. We're like, that's never gonna happen. And the guy goes, it's gotta be in 3 in a row if you ever wanna have consideration to do that.
Yeah, well, as Mark said, the crash data, the actual
All that
data
stuff.
can help.
Yeah.
And we'll get that crash data in the plan.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody else? Okay, we're good?
Yep.
We really appreciate your time. You
Thank
guys
you.
know what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for everything and very comprehensive. We're gonna have a big decision, tough decision.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone got a copy of the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Is anyone missing? Do you need any extras?
No, sir.
Okay, great.
You wanna go on further about? Fantastic. We're back. The next item on the agenda, we just finished with the consultant interviews, or 2 out of 3 consultant interviews for POCD. Next item is deliberation possible decision on the following. Special permit application number 337 PL 24-113, Doe Cherry Chocolate LLC, Gray Court LLC at 878 Boston Post Road. Proposes to establish a new 1,025 plus or minus square foot chocolatier within the first floor space formerly occupied by N2NEI Nail and Spa. The hearing closed on September 3rd, 2024. In our, I still call it packets, we got a draft resolution for this thing. It's a small vacant space in a building. The woman is going to be a chocolatier. And I think she's not selling flowers, but the guy next door is selling flowers.
Yes.
It's pretty straightforward, simple hours, 9 to 7. We really didn't get into any parking issues. All loading's going to come from the front. They do have a back door. There is parking.
Some outdoor tables?
We told her to add some outdoor tables in the front. Did anybody?
The bench.
The bench that they wanted, which they added. Any questions, comments, scriveners, errors, typos in this one that anyone found?
Nope.
They can come back later if they want to do more benches or more seating inside. But we do have a change of plans. So with that said or not said?
We did include some language in the conditions of approval here relative
Condition
to.
C.
Yes, condition C, where the commission is allowing, let's see, hereby
Maximum
approves a
one.
maximum of 1 bench and/or 2 tables with 2 seats at each table on the sidewalk in front of the business. We just gave them some flexibility there for outdoor seating based on
Did he give you
the
a,
commission's discussion with the applicant on the 3rd.
Did he give you a plan on the fly too, adding the 2 benches?
He did, he sort of drew something in on pencil,
That's
with
fine.
pencil.
That's fine.
It's fine.
Okay, fantastic. So we did cover that, fantastic. Looking for a motion to approve as submitted. Amy makes a motion,
I like this one.
and Jamie gets a second. All in favor? We know who's gonna get Anthony.
First chocolates.
Anthony,
Right
you
here.
ready? Next item on the agenda is special permit application number 335, landfilling and regrading application number 573 PL 24-92. Shiva, that's a tough one. Vishite and Vale Wayman at 25 Greenleaf Avenue. Proposal to construct a new 75 by 50-foot pervious artificial sports court, turf sports court, and form related site development activities, including the regrading of the property and installation of landscaping. Hearing closed on September 3rd, 2024. This is a small, less than 10-yard wide asphalt sport court. It went back and forth to Ty and Bond and Joe Canis to make sure the drainage was proper. It's a huge piece of land, which is 3.62 acres, and it's a tiny court. It was pretty straightforward, but there was a lot of back and forth between our outside engineering consultant and the applicant's consultants to get this done. Any typos, questions, comments, scrivener's errors on this one that anyone caught at the beginning?
So I'll just say we added in point C the no lights and no PA.
Correct.
Correct.
Which
Yeah.
came in,
Yep.
so that was
Yeah.
the only real kind of concern. But otherwise, they look great. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, just for the record, that's all no permanent lights. If they want permanent lights, they can do it. They might end up doing the temporary lights if they have something at night, but there's nothing we can do about that. But that's fantastic. Anything else on this one? No? Okay, Fred, we miss anything?
No.
Okay, then I would look for a motion to approve as submitted or as drafted. Adam makes the motion. I think George made the second.
Sure.
All in favor?
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, everybody's here. All right, fantastic. The next item on the agenda, I'm going to recuse myself and hand it over to the vice chairman. I'm also going to take off, okay?
Yeah. We
There's
can't
no
do
other
anything
business
else since
at
it's
our
special
next
meeting.
meeting. All right, Vice
Okay.
Chairman, you're up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Huh? I'll give Steve a minute before reading it in, and then we can discuss.
Get to go home and have dinner.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
All right,
Thanks,
see you.
See you, Steve. Yeah.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is site plan application number 277 PL-24-4, Christopher and Margaret Stefanoni at 57 Hoyt Street. This is the review of submitted materials relative to compliance with Planning and Zoning Commission adopted resolution and Superior Court decision. If you recall, in our packets, Jeremy sent a memo on, I believe Fred sent the memo, excuse me, on September 3rd, overviewing this. We also have town council, I see, in the audience as well. Do you want to give an overview
Sure,
of
I'll
it?
give a quick overview.
Quick overview of the memo, just so we're on the same page?
Yeah, you may recall from the memos, the original application was submitted back late 2010, early 2011, so that's about 13 plus years ago. And there was a remand, the court remanded it back to the commission 2 times in 2013 and 2015, and the most recent court decision was 2017. And through those various remands and the commission's original decision, there were various limits, parameters, restrictions, proposals, and this latest submission by the applicant is for the commission to confirm that what's being submitted complies with not only the originally submitted application, but the various conditions and stipulations put on by the commission and the court. So for example, it's a 2-story building, there's 4 units on each floor. There's 8 units proposed, 5 market rate, 3 affordable. There's at least 15 feet on both the north side and the south side yard, 15-foot rear yard setback. The mailboxes are not on the street, rather they're in the front entry to the building. 16 parking spaces, which is 2 per unit, which includes the 1 handicapped accessible unit. They're all 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom units. The driveway has been modified to pull it away from the north property line, and there's no retaining wall on the south property line. So a lot of these changes have been made, and we have a final revised plan, which is last dated July 11th. We did have the fire marshal review this. He signed off in a most recent email dated September 12th. Joe Canis from Ty & Bond, the commission's peer review engineer, noted in a September 3rd, 2024 email that all comments have been addressed, and this was put before Sewer Services, and we received a July 24, 2024 email from DPW Director Ed Gentile. I will note that, as I mentioned earlier, it's 5 market rate, 3 affordable. The applicant in the project narrative said if the commission wishes, they could do a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I think personally it's a little more in keeping with the original application, just keep it 5 and 3. But so we've looked at this, we've referred it out to sewer, engineering, stormwater, fire. We're comfortable that this meets the various limits, restrictions that have come through the years from both the court and the commission. So we would need a confirmation from the commission that that everything complies with those. It's not, as I said, it's not a new application. It's just finalizing, if you will, the previous application.
Right, that's correct. And I should remind the commission that we're limited via the court decision as to what we can do here tonight. So here we're really just looking to certify that the plans as submitted do in fact hold up to both the court, what the courts have stipulated, and that the town officials and our peer reviewer have signed off on, which I think they all have. So I think I'm comfortable saying that this sort of meets all of the criteria that was set forth by this long sort of process that's been going on iteratively over the last decade and change. So I don't think there's anything for us to do here tonight. I just wanted to make the commission aware and see if there's any issues that you might have raised with this.
I would just like to highlight, I guess, the issue of the age restriction.
Yes, thank you, George. I forgot to mention it. My fault.
But with that, so both, any residents of a unit have to be at least 62 years of age. Would that be deed restricted?
Right, so one of the things is, once the plan's finalized and a proposal, they apply for a zoning and building permit, we would work on the applicable deed restrictions and land records, which, as George properly notes, not only an age restriction, but also the 3 units will be deed restricted. Paperwork will have to be filed in land records. And when you lease one of those units, right, so they will have different rents. So thank you, George, for mentioning that as well.
Yeah, I'm just aware that we've litigated that issue in the past, I think, and did the court require, or the court ordered that 62 works?
As far as I know, yes. There's been no.
It was part of the court's decision?
Yes, there were no changes, amendments on that one issue.
Okay, because we don't want to litigate it again. I don't know who would litigate it, but maybe a new owner of the building, just as happened with Pembroke, right? But anyway, okay.
But thank you for mentioning that,
Yeah,
yes.
sure.
And the CT dot approvals then are the only that are...
Right, they would need to get the final curb cut approval from the state of Connecticut DOT, but that really needs to come a little later
after
on.
this process, right?
But you're correct. That would be part and parcel of the building permit. You're right.
Yep. Good. Good. We are happily done with it.
I mean, to the extent that I believe there's nothing that's not meeting what was set forth by the Superior Court decision, so I don't know that there's really much to say other than whether it meets or doesn't meet.
Right, correct, and that's just sort of what we're here for.
Yep.
So I think it does. I don't think we need to vote on this, right?
Vote, in the proper procedure, do you think, an official vote?
I don't think you have to.
Yeah, I don't think we have to, so I don't think we need to. I think this is just a way to keep everyone up to date with the project and just say that we're all aware that these conditions have all been met so that they can potentially move forward if they want to or not.
Okay.
So what we would do is send a letter to the applicant saying, we reviewed
The same
the commission,
thing.
based on these plans and this information, this complies with.
What we've said, probably include your memo.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, so that does that. And let's go back to, sorry, one sec. Go back to the agenda. I know we have nothing else on the agenda. We can't because it's a special meeting. So, Jeremy, we have upcoming meetings next week and the following Tuesday and the following Tuesday after that. So
Yes.
Perhaps you'd like to give us a rundown of what we're in store for.
Next week, September 24th, we have, we'll be up in room 206. We have 6 relatively minor public hearings. October 1st is likely the first public hearing on the Thorndale Circle application.
Okay.
We expect that will take multiple nights, so.
Is that in 206 too, or is that going to be the auditorium?
Right now, it's
206?
scheduled for 206.
Okay.
And then what we may end up doing on October 8th is trying to bring in the third
The third
consultant.
one here. Okay, great. So we cannot have any other business. Do we need to make a motion to close a special hearing, or can we just adjourn? I think we can just adjourn, right? Yeah, so then the meeting's adjourned, we're all good to go. Adios.
All right.